Are you tired of buying all those expensive orchestra libraries? And are you looking for an original sound? All you need is a microphone and the knowledge in this video, and you will be able to record and sample any instrument like this. This tutorial is divided into 3 parts. How to record your instrument, how to edit your recordings, and how to use all those samples to create a virtual instrument. I'm using FL Studio for this, but the concept is basically the same in other DAWs. And this also counts for the sampler you're using, of course. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more content like this. This first step will be divided into a few subcategories, and will be a lot of talking. If you click this video just to see how to create a virtual instrument from your recordings, you can use the timetable in the description to skip this part. Choosing the right microphone can be a pain, because there are many different brands, types and prices. I don't want to get too deep into this subject, because all microphones sound different, and unfortunately there's not one perfect mic that sounds great with every instrument. So I will give you a quick and simple guide for choosing the right microphone for your instrument. Remember, this is my opinion, and there's only one rule: if it sounds right, it is right. The price. If you want to have a great microphone for as cheap as possible, you should look for a microphone around €100. I don't think the difference between a €500 and a €100 microphone is that big, especially nowadays. There are a lot of brands that produce relatively cheap microphones with which you can achieve a great sound. The type. Before you buy a microphone, you should look out for the type, because there are 4 main microphone types, and every type has different specialties or flaws that make it better to use for some instruments than others. This is because these types have different ways of analyzing the sounds they hear. We need a mic that can record our instruments as accurate as possible. This means that for most instruments, you will need a condenser mic with a small membrane. This is a microphone that has as quality that it can record sounds highly accurate, which is what we want. It also has a great transient response, which means that it can handle sounds with a fast attack, like drums or piano. The condenser mic is known for studio recordings, and if you're looking for a mic that can record as many instruments as possible, this would be the one. You can of course buy more than one microphone with different types, if you can afford it. And this is what I would advise you to do if you're planning to make multiple virtual instruments. That way you can experiment for yourself what sounds the best on which instrument. For some cases a ribbon mic will sound better, because it gives shrill and thin sounding instruments like violin or brass a warmer sound. In other cases you're better off using a dynamic mic if you're recording loud sounds, for instance. I would advise you to do some research on your own to find out which type fits your instrument the best. I hope this short explanation helps, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section. The distance between your microphone and instrument can make your recordings sound really different. Big recording companies have different mic positions in their virtual instrument and have the budget to experiment with stuff like that, but you probably don't. So again, we want the recording to be as clean as possible. That way, we can change the placing of the instrument later on with reverb and panning. This means that the microphone should be quite close to the instrument, around a foot or 2 away from the sound. If you don't have a studio with great acoustics and isolation, where should you record? Try to find the best room in your house or apartment. Bigger rooms are better than really small ones, because you don't want to hear early reflections from the walls. But not too big, because you also don't want to hear an echo. My music teacher used to say that the living room is the best place to record in a house. His theory was that most living rooms have a lot of items against the walls that can break up the sound. This creates a clean recording. And in my experience, I found that he was right. Try to stand in the middle of the room when you record, and like I said, record at a close distance. If the room is not that well isolated, try to record at a time where there's not that much noise. Also try to avoid background noise like zooming computers. With all this information in mind, it's finally time to record your instrument. You first need to decide which articulations you want to record. A violin, for example, can play both short and long notes, but also a heckload of different variations. You have vibrato, staccato, mercato, pizzicato, etc. On the other hand, a piano only differs in the time a note is pressed and how loud. You can create key switches in your virtual instrument to switch articulations, but recording many different articulations is a lot of work. So decide before you begin recording what you want to record. To make the virtual instrument as realistic as possible, we want to record the instrument at different velocities. I would advise you to let the performer play each note soft, medium and loud. This is needed to program the velocities later on. Now let the performer play every note in the reach of the instrument on chromatic scale, and do this for all the velocities and then again for all the articulations. It can be hard to play in tune or the right velocity, so let the performer struggle with a note for as long as she needs. And then, when the note is played perfectly, make a loud clap before the player moves on to the next note. When you do this, you can easily spot the right notes when you need to cut them in the editing process, because there will be a peak in the sound. Watch out that you don't clap too early, because we don't want to mess up the tail of the sound. I will now show you how to cut and edit all the different tracks you recorded. Here are all the tracks of the different velocities for the short and long violin samples. First, I will throw your sample in an audio edit program. In my case, this is Edison. We want to clean up the background noise. Click on Normalize and then select the part in your audio recording where you can hear the background noise. Then select the brush tool. Click Acquire Noise Profile. Now select the whole sample and click on the brush tool again. Click Accept. As you can hear, the background noise is now removed. You could tweak the settings of the brush tool if you want, but the default settings work fine if the background noise is not that noticeable. If you feel like your sample is out of tune, there is software out there with which you can pitch shift your samples and check if you're not sure. Melodyne is a great program, but your DAW probably has a standard pitch shift program as well. We now need to chop up and name our samples. It's very important that you're focused when doing this, because if you make a mistake, it can be hard to find back. First, change the name of every track to a different note in the reach of your instrument on chromatic scale. If you followed my recording steps correctly, there should be a peak in the sound after every well-played note. Use the insert key and cut before every peak in the sound. Now it should be easy to put every note on the right track. Cut the best sample and make sure that there's no space left before the attack on the sound, or else there will be a delay in the sound when you play it with your piano. If you place your samples like this, you can always check and compare the samples with each other to make sure that there are no mistakes. Check every sample for errors like noise in the background, false notes, or wrong articulation and velocity. If you do find a mistake, you can always pitch shift the sample below or above 100 semitones up or down, and it won't be a problem. But if you're able to, recording it again is always the better option. Now we need to give all these samples a name. Click on the wave icon in the top left corner of the sample and click on Make Unique as Sample. Place the file naming window on your screen like this, so you can see with the blink of an eye which name your sample should be. Create a new folder and name it however you like. Now create maps for all the different articulations, and in every articulation folder, create a soft, medium and hard map. I am working on the hard-played short violin samples, so I'll put these in the correct folder now. The naming of these files is very important, because it will make your life easier later on. I will name this file a violin, short, hard G4, because that's the note and articulation it's playing. You can now do this for the rest of your samples. When you are finished naming one, scroll down so the track name of your next sample is visible. You can also copy and paste the first part of your sample's name. It saves a lot of time. Now it's time to create the virtual instrument. Open up the sampler you're using, go to the Files menu and create a new instrument. Use the wrench icon to open up the instrument settings. Click on the mapping editor to start arranging your samples. Browse to the folder where you put all your samples and drag all the samples of the articulation you want to create a virtual instrument for into the mapping editor. Just choose one of the velocities. We will add the other ones later. Click on the Auto button to select a part in your sample with the root key name in it. Click on Apply and close the window. Now click on the Root button and all the samples will automatically be sorted by their key. Now you can edit the range the samples span over the velocities. Samples with a soft velocity go at the bottom of the mapping editor, samples with the hard velocities at the top and medium velocity in the middle. The range of the velocities is something you have to experiment with for yourself. You can use the keyboard to test how your instrument is sounding. As you can see, I can play all the different velocities by moving my mouse on the key. You can make the range of the lowest and highest note a bit bigger. Your sampler automatically pitch shifts your samples to the correct key. Don't go too far, because at a certain point the notes start to sound really electronic and you lose realism. I would keep the auto pitching at a maximum of around 3 extra semitones. If you're lazy and don't want to record every single note, or something is missing in the samples, you can always use the auto pitch shift tool to add missing samples. So now all the notes are in place, and you could already use the instrument, but there are some things you can add to make the instrument better. If you have a MIDI keyboard, you might want to put the samples an octave higher or lower to make your sound playable on the keyboard. You can add effects like reverb or EQ to make the instrument sound better. If you have a long sample, you can consider to create a loop in it. That way, the instrument can play for as long as you want. This is really hard to achieve though. You can start to hear clicks in the sound if the loop is placed at the wrong time, and it can take a lot of work to put the loop on the right spot. If you do want to try stuff like this, you need to go to the wave editor. If you want to create key switches, you can do so by using the group editor. Open up both the group editor and mapping editor. On default, your instrument has grouped all your samples. You can rename this group to the articulation you're using. Now click the Create Empty Group button to create a new group. Rename this group to the articulation you want to add. Click on Selected Groups Only, so you can only see the samples you're working with. Select a new articulation group, and you can now drag the samples you want into that new group. Right now, the samples are playing at the same time. You can see that because both the groups are changing color when a note is pressed. Disable Edit All Groups because we want to edit one group at a time. Click on Group Start Options and select Start on Key. You can select the selection of keys you want to work as key switch here. The only thing left to do now is give your instrument a name and save it. Thanks for watching my first tutorial. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to let me know and I will keep making similar videos. Check out my channel for film score remakes. And it would be awesome if you showed your support by subscribing, commenting or leaving a like.